Hey there, welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art and culture, and now we're continuing with the year-end list for the top 10 best hit songs of 2025. I wish I could be more thrilled with this year-end list. I want to be. Truthfully, 2025 was a phenomenal year for music as a whole. You'll see a wealth of it in my list of my favorite songs and albums of this year coming out soon. So much great stuff that deserved to be so much bigger, or at least better represented on the Billboard charts, becoming hits. But that's the thing now, isn't it? I've heard the whole Billboard is irrelevant argument for decades now when it comes to the actual quality of the art that gets out. But as much as critics and diehard fans don't want Billboard to dictate the conversation, a lot of us still get in the trenches when great art gets popular and recognized by Billboard, or we think it should be way more popular than it is. As much as so many of us claim that we're above that conversation, it is still the reason I've got a side channel running Billboard Breakdown into its 12th season, and I see this every year with the Grammys or any other semi-credible award show. Yes, it does pain me to call the Grammys semi-credible, but the industry is real damn good at manufacturing a consent and a public to buy in, especially when it's perceived as artists and the industry seemingly awarding each other as if that gives it more legitimacy. I say all of this because if I was a music industry executive or A&R, I'd look at the chaff that got popular or at least charting in 2025, apparently the extended hangover of 2024 that everyone should have seen coming, and then I would look at the wealth of potential in the indie scene or just outside of the charts, and I would start throwing money around and fast. Buy when the market's low, takes a couple of risks, stop thinking that generative AI is gonna plug that gap. Spoilers, it won't. In any case, what this means for my best hits of 2025, I don't know how many of these would win out in a stronger year. There are years where big hits make my favorite songs list. This year it is way less likely. If I do a best of the 2020s list in 2030, I don't know how many songs here would make it, similar to 2018 or 2014 in the 2010s. I'm not saying any of these are bad, although thank God I had extended my list courtesy of Talk of the Charts. See the list down in the description. Without it, the pickings would have been so slim. But once you get out of the top 5, the order of this list can feel really interchangeable. Do not think you know what's coming. I've reshuffled this so many times the past couple of months, and I should also mention, falling off my list of the worst hits, I wasn't really a fan of K-pop Demon Hunters, nor the songs from that critically acclaimed Bad Bunny album that actually got popular, and given how much impact they both had on the charts, it felt like I had even less to pick from this year. One thing you will see though is a lot of R&B, the one genre that at least in the mainstream had a great year. For example, there's a subsection of SZA's critical defenders that would like her to sound more dignified or respectable than she presents, and that's just never been my favorite angle from her. I like it when she's looser and messier, a little more carefree, closer to Jhené Aiko than Summer Walker, and thus instead of putting 30 for 30 with that truly bad Kendrick Lamar verse on this list, or Luther, also with Kendrick for being borderline easy listening, albeit a really good version of it, I went with the song that even a lot of SZA fans don't seem to like that much. But man, watching SZA sound so effortlessly infatuated, but also smart enough to know that this heady feeling isn't about to last too long. He's not particularly mature, she's better at holding him down, the money's eventually gonna run out, but also where self-awareness gives way to perhaps genuine feelings, it is really charming, with a great bouncy groove that plays really well off the guitars. SZA can do all the ethereal ballads and play for high diva presence, of course she can pull that off, but there's something that feels more homegrown and charming here, more Jill Scott than Erykah Badu. If you know, you know.
I ain't been lonely since you said goodbye. Wish I could say I miss you, but you know I never lie.
Welcome welcome to the most predictable Spectrum Pulse entry on this list. I'm a huge Alan Jackson fan, so naturally a guy doing a very canny imitation of his early work would be enough to win me over in a weak year. Truthfully, Zach Top has both more and less going on for him than that mimicry. I'm not that easy. The neo-traditional polish is impeccable, and I actually really like the subject matter, walking a very narrow line running into an ex where you've actually pulled your life together, and it's all just measurably better without her, and I'm not about to lie about that. And there were two factors that solidified why I like this so much in 2025. The first being that Morgan Wallen basically tried to rip off this formula with I Got Better, and the pure sour vindictiveness compared to Zach Top's Tasty Honey, it was so welcome. The second was, well, my life did get appreciably better in 2025. I moved, I got married, I do sleep better. I'm not against bragging so long as you brag better. And this is low-key / corny enough that it's hard to get all that exasperated. I can't lie about that.
And so what? I've had you fell in love a couple times. Tell me, what's into you? Tell me, is it a crime?
I think Mariah the Scientist has a very similar issue to early Summer Walker or Kehlani, in that as soon as she gets the right vocal production that doesn't sound so metallic, her songwriting chops and really nice voice will pop onto a much bigger stage. And yet even then, this was a breakout year for her, and for good reason. Burning Blue did get held back by the production, at least for me, but this really grew on me. Yeah, I don't love the mix for Kali Uchis. You got Mariah's voice sounding better, just let the song be so pillowy and soft focus for them both, and drawing the Sade parallel is absolutely biting off more than you can credibly chew, but the chemistry and the harmonies are really legit, and I really appreciated this exasperated glare at those who are judgmental about their very public relationships. They're both passionate women where, yeah, it can be a little bit tempestuous or messy, and sometimes you can work it out. Hell, Mariah the Scientist got engaged to Young Thug just a couple of weeks ago after she dumped him and then they reconciled. At the very least, she got better music out of it than he did this year. But yeah, Mariah the Scientist has flown under the radar outside of R&B circles for a little too long now. This should get a lot more attention. But you know, while we're on the topic of mess,
'Cause I'm too messy, and then I'm too fucking clean. You told me get a job, and you asked where the hell I've been, and I'm too perfect. So I open my big mouth. I want to be me. Is that not allowed?
this was gonna make the list proper for the longest time. I love that curdled guitar line and that sinuous bass where you even get a little bit of a solo backed by the synths, the note-perfect, unkempt relationship mess on display where it feels like nobody can do anything right and everybody's a bit of a hypocrite. Lola Young's exhausted rasp that can still pull in some genuine soul when she starts belting, where it's not a question of if a breakup is inevitable, it's when. And good thing too, the guy in question sounds like a total dick who will never be properly satisfied and yet is so entitled to expect the world from his partner. Yeah, Lola Young is not perfect by any means. She knows that. She's kind of trying to own it. But this is a song from someone who has hit the very limit of trying to go halfway when the other person just won't budge. It's not healthy. But it did fade a little bit on me. Something about being caught up in the persistent migraine of this bad relationship got a little bit overextended. It didn't quite have the cathartic explosion it really deserved. And after being lukewarm on Lola Young's album this year and watching her seem a little strained to the extreme, I'm really hoping she can take the time off that she needs. Looking forward to maybe hearing more soon. We'll see. So this is the somber song where even a lot of the haters acknowledge that they gotta give this twerp some credit. He might be very much backed by the industry and yet somehow really needs a better manager as soon as possible, but my god, as a producer and songwriter, he can craft one hell of a scene. Easily his strongest and most developed groove to date with Sean Everett punching up a lot of the smoky atmosphere alongside that minor key swell, the spikes of guitar, and a distorted vocal pickup that feels yanked from 20 2010s indie rock. I mean, coupled with that falsetto, this sounds like a better Tame Impala song than they got from, well, Tame Impala this year. And it's that sense of atmosphere and grandiosity that basically saves Sombr from his own melodramatic whinging. In fact, it's exactly what I want acts who lean into immature melodrama to go and do. Make it smoky and as stylish as possible, try to own that stage. I've seen a lot of comparisons being made to the 1975, and I really can't agree. The 80s synth pop that the 1975 liked to make is way more polished and bright in order to serve as juxtaposition to edgier content and Matty Healy being an asshole. Whereas Sombr is way more direct in all of it. No ironic glamour here, the moody swagger's all for its own sake. In fact, the person who Sombr should work with? Miley Cyrus. They already got the Sean Everett connection. They seem like they embody that same hyper-stylized universe. Somebody make that happen, especially if the music remains this great.
All I ever wanted was a black Grand National. Fuck being rational, give them what they asked for. It's not enough. Few solid niggas left, but it's not enough. Few bitches that'll really step, but it's not enough. Say you bigger than myself, but it's not enough.
Oh, I know some people are expecting to see a lot more Kendrick Lamar on my best list, and TV Off is awesome for a lot of very obvious reasons. You all know it from the past year. It's stuffed full of hooks and memorable lines, the beat change is great, the braggadocious attitude is something that Kendrick can do in his sleep, fuck being rational, give him what they ask for, even as he's exasperated that people aren't looking to do more within the culture. It's the essence of killing the party so he can resurrect it and throw everyone else to the wayside, try to do a little better. And of course, the biggest shout out to a producer / condiment that I've heard in recent memory, and if it didn't become a supercharged meme, something would have been very, very wrong. But at the same time, the songs I love most from GNX, they were never gonna be the most popular. Man in the Garden and Reincarnated were not gonna be hits, more's the pity. And given the album's popular run and a larger hip-hop conversation in 2025, especially in the underground, it weirdly feels very much of its own year to me. There's a greater sense of distance from GNX than I expected. In an absolute banner year for hip-hop, I still love that album, but it feels like the exclamation point on a sentence that we've already read, where in every subsequent sentence in the paragraph, it just got worse. See everything that Drake released this year. And I kinda don't want to see it win top prizes at the Grammys in comparison to better hip-hop albums that feel more relevant and dropped in 2025. TV Off is so ridiculously fun, it can transcend a lot, even overexposure, but I find more value where the revolution isn't televised.
Say I'm the biggest, the largest. Been stepping up shit since my mama stayed in them apartments. Regardless, my daddy told me keep the heat even when I'm in foreigns. I'm heartless, cause these niggas is hating on me just because I'm the biggest, the largest, the biggest, the largest.
One of the best surprises about using an extended list of hits is that you get surprised what managed to scrape together just enough traction to land inside. The top 50 to 100 has become a little easier to predict with time, but go deeper and it gets wild. And I am legit thrilled that BigXThaPlug managed to get a swaggering slice of Texas rap onto the charts, one that's both quotable, catchy, and absolutely hilarious. Part of this is, in essence, solidarity. As a pretty big man myself, I'm about 6'5", about 250 pounds. I actually lost 30 pounds this year, thank you all for noticing. There is a kindred spirit from a fellow large man talking about how he's the biggest dude in his space. And again, I don't have a problem with bragging so much as the expectation that you brag better. And against the flashy horns and the shambling clatter of the trap percussion, there is a certain stentorian presence to BigXThaPlug going into his climb up out of the scene. I like that he's going back to buy shoes for the kids. I like that he shouts out a lot of local Texas establishments in Austin. I like that he paid down all of his back rent early and he gives back frequently with more eyes on the prize. And the hook is magnetic as hell. I would have loved a third verse, and I do think BigXThaPlug has a bit of a weird year, we'll get into more later, but songs like this guarantee is gonna stick around. We'll all be better for it.
Somebody said pray for me, cause the pills ran out and I still can't sleep. Somebody sent a word upstairs, cause the bar shut down and I'm God knows where. Oh, should not go heavy store, cause mine ain't working anymore. Somebody said pray for me, all I'm asking for is a little mercy, amen.
So here's the thing. With the uptick of songs with a Christian themes in the Hot 100, while it's historically not a great sign for the art, if you are gonna do it, Shaboozey and Jelly Roll are the way you double down effectively. If you've heard Shaboozey's albums, you might start coming across like he's got one great trick for his hangdog stomp clap country with traces of hip-hop. It's not remotely surprising that Jelly Roll was gonna show up, but they're both in their natural comfort zone, digging their way out of their demons with no easy exit and trying to be better men, pairing it with much warmer acoustic guitars, the mandolin, banjo, and fiddle, alongside a big choir that really helps them muster some genuine gospel swell and really good chemistry. It's absolutely playing to a formula. A lot of music that is religiously inclined tends to do so, but at least this has some communal soul and doesn't feel as sterile or smug. At least somebody's prayers might have been answered with this, because it's a pretty great song. Alright, now on to the list proper. Again, outside the top 5, I think some of these might well be interchangeable in their order, but here we go. Number 10. So I was talking about this list with my partner, and one observation that came out was a bit of what I really liked and appreciated this year was a certain baseline competency consistently landing. If the Hot 100 isn't going to take that many chances these days, I want to highlight not fucking up the formula, even if there is indeed a formula. And let me stress, this guy's teetering on the edge of doing so, but he stuck the landing in the back half of 2024, and this stuck around just long enough. Let's be brutally honest about Teddy Swims. As much as I appreciate him paying his dues around R&B and soul with a really damn good voice, after reviewing his album earlier this year, it's painfully obvious that his career is gonna live or die on great singles. Now, I'm not convinced he's much of an album artist, so much as a very strong showman who works with the best material he gets. Might be why he came out saying that he was dabbling with generative AI in order to polish up some songs, and full disclosure, that knocked this a fair bit lower over the course of the year. If I don't hear the creativity in your usage of generative AI, I'm gonna treat it the same way critics did auto-tune for the vocally bankrupt in the late 2000s. But Bad Dreams is one of those singles where I just shake my head. Yep, he got another one. I love the supple groove off to the gentle rollick and the well-balanced drums. I really love the smoldering spike of guitars in the post-chorus, and Teddy Swims just nails that plaintive angst of trying to get this woman to either come back to him or set him free. He just wants some peace of mind. And this is not the first nor last song on this list about looking for that calm or savoring it in 2025. Feels like that could mean something. I think I understand why this may have worked. Anyway, Teddy Swims' crossover career will last precisely as long as he gets hits. Not sure he's got much in the tank after that last album. We'll have to see. Number 9. I know for a fact there's going to be more than a few songs on this year-end list that might surprise my larger audience. And as someone who knows just how saturated the market is for making year-end lists or the best hits of any given year, especially on this platform, I appreciate curveballs more than ever before. The last thing we all want to be saying is liking the same thing. The less consensus, the better. Even then, I'm a little bit surprised this grew on me as much as it did, but while I watched it perpetually underperform, I wound up liking it even more.
Out on the pop out, cause it's hot out. You was playing games, hey, you on time out. Right on fine niggas, I'm tryna find niggas. I've been cuffed up too long, let me remind niggas.
Okay, there's no way around it. Cardi B's Am I the Problem was a disappointment in 2025, and I truly don't think it's all her fault. Atlantic mismanaged this rollout so catastrophically, the fact we got a good album at all is something of a miracle. Well, the fact we got an album, it just wasn't what it was hyped up to be. Half because Invasion of Privacy is wildly overrated in its time, half because when WAP with Megan Thee Stallion's your lead-off single, you need something of at least comparable when you drop the album 5 years later. But while Outside didn't initially work that much for me, the less trust the label had in the song, the more I came to really appreciate it. It's shockingly well produced and catchy, with a swaggering polish off the creeping keys and the blast of horns. The hook is built for the summer with a tangible edge, and Cardi meets that energy really well. She's traded some of her initial raw firepower for a bit more refinement in her flow and punchlines, but you can still pick up the tangible venom at Offset, where she's single and she's looking to fuck and hard, men or women. I don't know why it gets overlooked that Cardi B is very bisexual and openly hitting on both LeBron and his wife alongside Aja Wilson, but really, she's horny enough that she might just fuck the Uber driver. It's being that confrontational and flagrant and owning it, and also really funny in a way that this year could have used a lot more of. In a time where there's a nascent anti-queer and sex-negative cultural presence, especially down south, Cardi B is a double middle finger in that direction. Maybe that's why this wasn't as big as it should have been, but if you found a way to actually have a hot girl summer in 2025, I think this was on the playlist. You were better for it. Number 8. Of course, there's the flip side to being so confrontational. Not gonna be for everyone, and if you thought Cardi B had gone to this well too many times before, I wouldn't blame you. Sometimes there's the art in just tidying up the fine details, getting something a little bit more prim and well packaged. Not quite conciliatory, but reading the note and tapping into something more earnest and sincere. And really, if you know, this has been such a long time coming.
Can you come pick up your clothes? I had them folded. Leave me at the door. It's still open. I know it's getting cold out, but it's not frozen.
Look, I was there in the mid to late 2010s. I wanted Kehlani to have some breakthrough success, but it often felt like their choice of production just held them back from being as sharp as they really could be. Kind of the same problem Mariah the Scientist is going through right now, playing to a more sterile soundscape that doesn't flatter their voice, show the same sort of organic dimensionality that they have. So after a particularly rough couple of years, including where an already forgotten act leveraged their name for clout and clickbait to get on, when their own music from 2 projects just couldn't chart, this is Kehlani's long-awaited big radio hit. And it's unabashedly one of their best songs ever. The lush strings and guitars that set up that supple groove, the production that finally gives their voice some room to breathe, and subject matter that actually has some emotional nuance and complexity behind it. On the surface, it's a breakup apology song where they're plainly not over it, even if they were the one who initiated the breakup, so there is a sober yet yearning balance behind the offer to come get your clothes folded at their house. They're willing to try again, not give up everything, but maybe work together, or sadly accept that it wasn't meant to be, try to move on. Kehlani has said in interviews that the leaving is the route they normally prefer, but their heart is trying to get them to work through it together, show a little more vulnerability and a grace that they rarely show effectively. Truthfully, it's a lot more mature than Kehlani normally writes, and it's a really good look on them. And again, that sort of queer love story that feels a little bit more mundane but no less relevant, it's kind of beautiful. It's important that they get some shine too. Let's see if the momentum follows through. I mean, I think they've certainly earned it, and this song's worth a lot of attention. Number 7. On the flip side, sometimes the R&B doesn't have to be heavy. SZA already proved that on this list. Sometimes you get songs that are lighter and more playful, and this year, man, they felt welcome. And for an act who is easily one of the biggest mainstream breakthroughs in terms of sheer talent,
Be the man I need. Tell me you got something to give. I want it. I kinda like it when you call me wonderful. Whatever the type of talk it is, come on then. I gotta know you're meant to be the man I need. Talk to me.
if the biggest mark mark against Olivia Dean is that she's a little too guarded and safe for now. That's a nitpick, especially as The Art of Loving was so meticulously sharp, yet soulful and charming. And again, this was a year where I really appreciated acts being able to nail their own formula. And in cribbing from Alicia Keys to Amy Winehouse to Adele, Olivia Dean is the student of the game that gets that sterling report card, and we're all better for it. This is her biggest and probably best song to date. The fluttery keys and watery guitar, God, I love that piano flourish on the pre-chorus, the brittle yet precise percussion, an impeccably balanced and produced mix, and Olivia Dean herself putting on a masterclass of tasteful elegance that still actually wants this guy to follow through and respond, talk to her. It's an increasingly rare example of flirting in mainstream music that doesn't feel forced either way, where the playful exasperation utterly nails the warmth and the genuine interest that she has, where the disavowal slides away just enough to invite that other person in, and the magnetism is really goddamn charming. Given the success of Olivia Dean's other singles and non-singles on the Hot 100 in the last quarter of 2025, I hear a lot of tangible star presence, or at the very least an industry that thinks that she can be the next big thing. And you know, when the music's this great, we could all use a little bit more. I'll take it. Number 6. So in my honorable mentions, I brought up that I did have a really good 2025 personally. I'm not going to shy away from saying that. I'm not going to deny myself happiness when that is part of the mechanism that is going to grind you down, blunts your joy, make you think less of yourself. But I'm also very much aware that my experience is not the rule, and there is absolutely exhausting and dire moments where it all just felt like way too much, especially if you follow the news at all. In times like those, well man, talk about this meeting the moment.
I need some good news. Sitting here sipping on cold truth. Nobody knows what I'm going through, but the devil ain't walking my shoes.
I already mentioned in discussing Amen that Shaboozey's got a bit of a formula. I saw that when I saw him live at Osheaga just this year, when he repeated his greatest hit, a bar song Tipsy, multiple times. And if you didn't know his catalog, you'd think that he had done it even more given his sound. But good news proved that not only was he not a one-hit wonder, but he could read the room and understand why so many people were drawn to his unique blend of influences and genres. When I reviewed his 2024 album, I highlighted how ready he sounded for the prime time, and tucking this onto the deluxe re-release was the best possible decision. And I might have been won over the second I heard that pedal steel and fiddle on the first verse, or the punch a harmonica on the bridge with the oh hays. Yeah, I'm not too good for some stomp clap folk, I never have been, but he nails the weary, soulful plea for some sort of respite after drinking a little bit too much, something to buoy up his spirits, no pun intended, between his lonely present and a difficult past. And some might think the big multi-tracked hook is a bit overdone, but I think Shaboozey understood that for this sort of barroom sing-along dropped in mid-November 2024, it would be precisely the note of catharsis, maybe even hope that some people needed. Damn good for a wallow. I'm just looking forward to the next bit of work. Number 5. So as someone who really likes both hip-hop and country music, I'm well aware the fusion of the two rarely works as well as it should, mostly because it then tends to be the easiest target for a lot of critics who might know more of one genre than the other. No album got as much vitriol this year for trying to strike that balance than I Hope You're Happy by BigXThaPlug, not helped by some very underthought statements that he made about his artistry that felt really clumsy to me, which also feels like the most appropriate adjective for that album trying to strike that country rap fusion. I liked it a lot more at the time, I hear a lot more of its flaws now, but I also think its strongest moments and a lot of BigXThaPlug's actual words and subtext did not get the attention they deserved. For example,
don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. Don't ask for all your things back, cussing out my name, yeah, just to go and take back what you say.
One of the things where BigXThaPlug does not get nearly enough credit is his emotive honesty. There's an expectation placed on him to show a lot of stoic machismo, and he tends to be a little bit more open-hearted than that. It follows in the canon of Texas rappers who are more naturally introspective than I think they ever get credit for, like Scarface, where yeah, you can make bangers like The Largest and still have more of a sensitive side, and All the Way really proved that. Yeah, it's a breakup song with a lot of messy emotions, and I really like that he mentioned trying to hold her hand at one point in the relationship and feeling some nervousness. It's a small detail, but it says a lot. It really humanizes him, but it's also very firm in actually ending things with that partner who wasn't as stable or committed to the relationship, which he seems to have grasped at this time, and he's now got to deal with the painful results. And Bailey Zimmerman is a great fit for that hook. I already liked how the well-positioned multi-tracking to amp up his performance really sold the song, but he's also felt a bit adrift as the Morgan Wallen wannabe when his own influences feel considerably different, but his best material has always come in these sour yet direct and effective breakup songs, and he nails the hook. Yeah, the transitions aren't perfect, it's not a clean fit, but breakups aren't clean, and I'm more forgiving of the rough edges when the personal detail lands. This might be the biggest hit of both their careers to date, and I do appreciate it indeed goes all the way. Number 4. Of course, for every great breakup song, there are those where there's a reconnection for questionable reasons, and I already included Kehlani on this list. This is the one that I like more. It's a newer hit that's flown under the radar, will probably be a little bigger next year, certainly hope it will, and you can tell that someone heard of their previous duet and all the chemistry they had, where there's actually been social media discourse whether or not they are a thing off record, and then they thought, okay, you know what, let's do round 2. And rip everyone's heart out.
And I don't mind if I do. Drink up the nerve to show up at your house. If you wanna know the truth, it's killing me not holding you right now.
This is 2025's Need You Now. If that's not an incentive for everyone who doesn't know who Riley Green or Ella Langley is to check this out, I don't know what this is. But even then, that feels a bit reductive for this song, mostly because you can tell both of them are trying desperately to keep a veneer that they've got everything together in place after having broken up, down to the gentle acoustic guitar and the shimmering pedal steel, where it's trying to sound a lot more respectable and understated until one or both of them have a few too many whiskeys and they stumble back to each other's house, and neither quite mind it. And I love the oblique harmonies and how Ella Langley's presence begins really understated and the entire song feels very intimate, and then he has you wondering why it didn't work out in the first place if the chemistry is this good, which has you then reading between the lines, picking up bits of complicated history, probably a lot of good reasons why they aren't together now, and even if they hook up again, it's not gonna add up to more. It's not gonna last. There's a lot of songs about drunken reconnections in country music, but the best are nearly always duets that are played straight with slightly older acts, where history levels out the framing, gives the scene the space to just be achingly sad. Where after the barroom courtship of You Look Like You Love Me, this is a song that comes years later after many truths get spun and hearts get broken. Ella Langley looks like she's gonna have the bigger career. Her ascendancy this year has been really special, and Weren't for the Wind was one of the last cuts for this list. But between the two of them, this is their best, at least so far. Number 3. But you don't always need complexity, and funnily enough, the next 2 songs on this list are both breakup songs in their own way. So let's begin with the artist where I was lukewarm on that first single, but when I heard this, I was convinced he was for real.
How can we go back to being friends when we just shared a bed? How can you look at me and pretend I'm someone you never met?
The comparison that struck me when I heard Back to Friends was not just that it reminded me a little of Britpop with the sandy clatter of percussion and those huge piano chords, then intersecting with that steady whining churn of electric guitar alongside that huge overdubbed hook, and that it was a little bit later than that scene, but still distinctly English. Robbie Williams. Now, he always had more style than substance. His crossover career burned out hot and fast, especially stateside, but there was always something so huge about his showmanship, draped in cinematic orchestration with an elastic vocal flexibility that if you were sucked into that whirling expanse, it felt so magnetic. Maybe it's the relative shallowness of Sombr's writing that draws some of that comparison, because he's considerably whinier than Robbie Williams ever was, but I also get a similar texture to that melodrama when it plays bigger than it kinda should be. Because let's be real, Back to Friends should not be able to carry itself like this. He got way too invested in the hookup, and he's now salty that she just wants to be friends. And to Sombr, this betrayal, not really much of a betrayal, she seemed like she was very straightforward about it, it shatters his world. And in that, he utterly nails this melodrama. It doesn't logically make sense, but it doesn't have to. It feels emotionally true. That's what works in art. And that weight does a lot of heavy lifting on Sombr's album, which the more I think about it was way better than it had any right to be. And well, Undressed kind of got cloying very quickly. This feels like the pop music that wants to own the stage when nobody else in the mainstream really wanted it this year. If Sombr doesn't find any number of ways to screw up his career, down to perhaps the most eye-rolling name imaginable, he could well go on a run, and I want to see it happen, especially if we get more like this. Number 2. But on the topic of owning the stage, one person where it seemed like the weight of the spotlight was too hot and too fast, Chappell Roan. You wouldn't have thought that fully in 2024, where it felt like a glorious coming out party at least a year late, but as that year wound down, I had the feeling that she or her management weren't positioning her the best for long-term success, especially as social media was, let's call it, extremely unkind and uncharitable to her for so many stupid reasons. The majority would implode utterly if they faced anything close to the same strain or scrutiny. So I'm not surprised that after The Giver didn't quite move the needle the way it probably should have, it appears like she may have taken a step back, maybe slowed the release trajectory a little bit, but we did still get this.
Just another day, it's not all right till it's over. It's never over. It's just another day, it's not over till it's over. It's never over.
So for context, I don't think the song is better than the best songs on The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. I'd struggle to say that's better than Casual or Red Wine Supernova or even Pink Pony Club. That song qualified for my year-end list last year. I considered it, but I had other songs I liked more. If you're wondering why it's not here, that's the reason why. And I also think this does speak to the questionable quality of 2025 as a whole. But man, this is still fucking phenomenal. Where she described it like the cousin to Casual, and I absolutely hear it. The heartfelt frustration in trying to banish a lot of old memories when your own senses start betraying you, the swell of that instrumentation coming off the clatter of the subway sound, with a distinctly hazy mid to late 80s texture of the guitar rattle around the steady thrum of the bass, the pileup of unreleased emotions as she's trying to be normal about all of it, but she's still gonna reach a breaking point where she does something drastic and reckless, like move to goddamn Saskatchewan. You know what's actually in there, right? People who are willingly choosing to live in Saskatchewan. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So, grumpy ex-Manitoban thoughts aside, what sealed this song for me as a favorite is, shit, you already know, it's that extended outro. Half Billy Joel homage to She's Got Away interwoven into the New York texture of the song. Half a play of words of She's Got Away and She Got Away, where Chappell Roan cannot be the first person to have come up with it. It feels like we've always had it. It's the lighters in the air moment of heartbreak but longing that nails a very specific, very lesbian brand of folk and rock that has persisted in alternative spaces for decades now, and yet rarely ever crosses over. I tend to adore this style of music, and this belongs in that canon. Even if it takes a while for Chappell Roan to come back with her Kate Bush art rock-esque abandon and drive, songs like this It's why I'm going to keep waiting. But before we get to that number one, this is where I would normally run through the list of songs that charted only in Canada or close to it, so I can quote my adage that the Canadian charts are always better. But man, the past few years have really tested that. Now, to be fair to myself, all the next couple songs were bigger in Canada than they were in the US based off of year-end chart positions, if they made that year-end list at all. But I took some of our exports and I can't say we are sending our finest. That being said, if there's a year where I'm going to be all the more adamant about supporting Canadian culture, not Tate McRae's best song, but it understands what Tate McRae does best as an artist. Dance with a lot of energy and nestle herself within better production to let her weak voice be carried by it. It's not a new approach, but from Selena Gomez to Britney Spears, you've heard this before. Tate McRae is just the newest to really work it. Now it feels like it's really trying to tap into the Britney by way of Pussycat Dolls 2000s throwback, and yet I wound up liking this a lot more than many songs of that era and that sound. Not completely sure why. Maybe it's how Britney sounded a lot better with Turn of the Millennium Max Martin hooks, or how the Pussycat Dolls had a very dead-eyed approach to their sexuality, whereas Tate McRae sounds a little bit more human for it. But there's a smolder behind the Neptunes rip-off drums that Ryan Tedder is using here that is actually somewhat credible. Also, by some coincidence, we both have hazel eyes. Not claiming solidarity on that when the song was about fucking in a shockingly uncomfortable space, but when it comes to this type of archetype, I will notice the differences. All I'm saying.
Way you got me all in my head. Think I'd rather you in my bed. Whatever it is, you know I can take it. I'm counting the days, how many days till I can see you again.
And speaking of pop and R&B that relies a lot more on its production to carry it more than its frontman, Dijon and Mick G basically hijacked this song from Justin Bieber and turned it into a really good wistful slow burn with some ragged energy in a lot of the guitars and drums. And it winds up the best of that album and probably Justin Bieber's best in years. If you've heard Dijon's album this year, this is no Yamaha, but it did remind me a little of how Justin Bieber built his initial YouTube fandom off of a bunch of choppy, quasi-amateurish acoustic songs. And there is something homegrown about that that kind of strikes that nerve, especially as his voice has credibly improved since then. Wouldn't say no to more of this. We'll see.
Girl, I can't decide if I should stay and say I tried, or I should leave and say goodbye. It's killing me inside. If I could just get next to you, I'd probably be alright. But we're so busy in this life, we always say some other time.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I'd like to hear more of this too. Yeah, it's Drake hijacking a beat from SZA with the pervasive acoustic guitars and the gentle groove, and I don't really think Party Next Door adds that much to this at all, even with that post-chorus, and Yebba basically tacks on an outro. But this was really the only point this year where Drake tried to look in the mirror and face some serious self-reflection, and it leads to an extremely rare moment of bleary, half-sung maturity. There's honestly something a little bit startling about the image of him drinking with his older dad, who is spouting off about the hoes that just don't love you, and Drake has that moment of, oh shit, this is what my life is ultimately going to become if I don't do anything else. And I also like the second verse where he acknowledges that he lost track of his faith and he doesn't have people in his life to talk to that he can really trust, as a bunch of them wound up dead. Both Kendrick and Drake have referenced deaths that have occurred alongside the beef, probably a lot more than we might know. That says a lot. And I also appreciate that Drake does not ask for our sympathy. He knows he's not going to get it. He's got to do the hard work of repair, which he promptly spent the rest of 2025 not doing because being toxic and lazy is way easier, even if it costs you your soul. All I'm saying.
Getting cleaner, all the damn apologies, paying tolls on bridges that I've burned. I've been afraid of growing up, 'cause that would mean the sober up. But stone and drunk don't mix with love and hurt. Does that make me a quitter?
impression Canada will always be a little bit more gracious to a certain brand of folk music that's on the cusp of being called indie, but really isn't. So here's Cameron Whitcomb. He's from Alberta, he was on American Idol. His nasal rasp is absolutely an acquired taste, especially when they multi-track it on this song. Sounds like if Kid Laroi actually had talent. This was his biggest hit up here, and I happen to think it's really damn good. Yeah, the choppy acoustics are an easy sell for me alongside the big stomp clap and that sing-along are familiar, but the central sentiment of actually trying to get clean and trying to reconcile with people you hurt while under the influence, that's actually a really good point, especially when you'd rather throw your hands up than rebuild relationships and just get drunk or high again. The sarcasm and frustration really make this song work, especially when he's looking at everybody who's got some sort of philosophy on how to get clean, and it's rarely ever that simple. Not sure if I really get behind anything else this guy has done, but at least this is pretty good. I'll stick up for it. If you haven't heard it, give it a shot. And that's all the Canadian songs. I know, short list. 2025 was a rough year. But now back to things proper. Number 1. So here's a fun fact. If I was going by my old rules and just using the year-end Hot 100, this would be under the category of the Canadian charts are always better. It made our year-end list when it fell just below that mark stateside. Hell, if I was using my old rules, I would think I would have had to go to Sombr for my number 1 hit of the year, not this, which I feel is very reflective of this year. This song, an American song from American artists, is my favorite hit of 2025. It can't even get as popular in their own country, even if they would probably be better for it. But if I were to highlight something about even my favorite hit songs of 2025, it's that lingering feeling of stasis, wallow, going backwards, where it's rare to see someone change and go forth, try to do better. I did not expect that song would come from these two acts, but I remember when Dial Drunk by Noah Kahan and Post Malone was my favorite hit song of 2023, there is a precedent, but it's probably a little more difficult to defend this.
Oh my brother, you don't have to follow in your bloodline. Oh, we got each other, and if you got tomorrow, then you still got time to break the chain that left you scarred from where you came into who you are. Oh my brother, you don't have to follow in your bloodline.
Here's the big hot take to end this list. Neither Alex Warren nor Jelly Roll are as bad as a lot of folks want to make them out to be, even if the artists themselves can be their own worst enemy. For Jelly Roll in terms of overexposure and some of his own idiotic missteps. For Alex Warren, the melodramatic impulse to not focus his creative direction in favor of a lot of overwrought adult contemporary, which will probably make him more money in the end. And yet, I would still argue that Bloodline is their best song in years, playing to that same stomp clap millennial folk that gets so maligned by a lot of critics, but kept up tempo with real vocal chemistry. In both text and metatext in this song, they need each other. The fast pick guitars that build some galloping presence as they stack the main vocal line. This is a song about confronting family legacy of vice and pain that you do not want, where you're terrified you're gonna fall into the same cycle, but then you get the support from a friend, get you out onto a better path with genuine empathy without trying to sound preachy, knowing that road is gonna be hard, but there's enough force to push you forth on a good way. And I'll be honest, I was so ready to condemn this song before hearing it off the title. Does anyone want to hear a song from two doughy white dudes about one's bloodline? Until you get that this is a strident rejection of historical continuity. You don't have to stew in resentment or malaise. There can be a way out. From where you came isn't who you are. I don't know anything about that's that good about either man's politics. What I do know, I really don't kind of like. And I don't think they were trying to write something that would make your average America First groiper shit himself. But the rejection of embrace tradition, when they acknowledge these traditions only bring you misery and ruin, it's a through line that's got some striving spirit to go forward, even if that's an interpretation that found them accidentally. Yes, this is not a pick that any other critic's gonna respect, especially if the easiest comparison might be Hey Brother by the late Avicii. But the production production and hook have been better here, and when it helps the spirit sing along with righteous fervor, that's gonna win me over, even if neither act is gonna probably be this good again. It's my favorite hit song of 2025 because even if you think it's hokey or corny or deeply embarrassing, it's trying for more positive momentum and community, and it's got no right to kick as much ass as it does. We absolutely can't expect better, but at least here, we might not walk alone. I'll take that. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. I'll admit again, there's enough curveballs on this list. I'm curious what all of yours are down in the description below. And hey, I really appreciate y'all sticking around, especially again, these are a little bit of curveballs that show up on this list. But again, if it was all continuity, if it was all consensus, it wouldn't be interesting now, would it? But hey, again, leave your comments down there below. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you want to help support the channel, get albums on my schedule in the new year, see some year-end lists early, or, just yell at me on my Discord, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Don't feel obligated. Tough times out there. I understand. Recession's coming. But hey, the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark. You're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.